16th of July, thousands of devotees gathered in the front of the 12th century Sri Jagannath temple in the coastal city of Puri in the eastern Indian state of Odisha for the annual Yath Yatra of the pulling of the chariots. The celebratory mood, however, took a somber turn when 2 people were killed and over 100 others were wounded in a near stampede-like situation when devotees were pushed aside to make way for an ambulance. The week-long festival was also celebrated in Srirampur in the state of West Bengal, where thousands of locals lined the streets to mark this procession of chariots, which dates back to 1396. Hello and welcome. I am Rhythm Sharma and this is Inside South Asia. Delhi, India's capital and the center of its democratic institutions, has long been a gathering place where citizens come together to express their concerns. But on July 20th, a march driven largely by Gen Z protesters erupted into a standoff between young demonstrators demanding accountability and a state determined to maintain order on the streets. At the core of this movement is the youth-led Cockroach Janata Party, a satirical group that has evolved into a larger campaign after months of organizing and social media mobilization. Their focus on the education system and recent exam leaks has resonated with a generation increasingly disillusioned by alleged corruption, inequality, and institutional failures.
Barricades were torn down. Tear gas canisters were fired. Stones were hurled. And a movement that began with young citizens seeking answers snowballed into clashes between protesters and security officials.
Something's gone wrong and you feel like you can be at a position of not answering it, and that's incorrect. So I feel we should all gather here in order to at least solidify our decision.
The march, powered largely by Gen Z students and young professionals, rose out of mounting frustration. But its trigger point was the latest leak of questions for the NEET examination, which lakhs of medical aspirants undertake in India. Long ignored, sidelined and forced to bear the burden of institutional failure, thousands poured into the streets on the 20th of July, in numbers rarely seen in recent years. By early afternoon, several thousands had gathered in the city's core, as the police in riot gear moved in to contain the crowd. The call was for a march to the parliament on the same day that the monsoon session began. But with security risks in mind, the police denied permission for it. As the day proceeded, networks were cut and roads were blocked. Communication broke down and tensions escalated. As the police tried to push back demonstrators into a small designated protest enclosure near Jantar Mantar, anger, impatience and sloganeering grew. By late afternoon and early evening hours on Monday, the police used bait-and charges, tear gas and crowd control tactics. But the protesters pushed forward, determined to breach the cordons and make visible the urgency that had driven them into the streets in the first place. Many were heckled, struck with lathis and in some cases trampled amid the panic.
Now, as we know, since morning, thousands of people have been coming to the designated protest site, which is at the Jantar Mantar, but their given the fact that there wasn't enough space over there, a lot of those protesters spilled over onto different parts of central Delhi. We're talking about Janpath, we're talking about Connaught Place, and also here at Raisina Road.
The Delhi police described the protesters as aggressive and unruly, saying more than 118 personnel, including senior officers, were injured, and that demonstrators ignored repeated warnings and orders to disperse.
Delhi police appeals to all protesters to maintain peace. The public is advised not to believe or circulate rumors, misinformation, or unverified content through any platform. Citizens are requested to rely only on authentic sources of information and extend their cooperation to Delhi police in maintaining peace, harmony, and public order.
But students at the protest and other eyewitnesses have a different story to tell. Many accuse the police and Rapid Action Force of using excessive and indiscriminate force against the demonstrators. Over 150 protesters were injured, many with wounds on their head, baton marks on their backs, and some images showing injuries that look like pellet gun wounds. While police identifies individuals who injured security personnel, the courts are witnessing a showdown over demands for a probe into the allegations of police brutality. But the movement has been ongoing long before the 20th July march. In an effort to press for accountability, activist Sonam Wangchuk sat on a hunger strike. But tensions escalated on the 20th day of his fast when the police took him to Safdarjung Hospital against his will in an attempt to end the strike. Since then, the Cockroach Janata Party has demanded his release, along with accountability for a string of paper leaks, most notably the NEET exam leak. The group is also demanding 1 crore rupees in compensation for families of students who died by suicide after the leak. But at the center of their demands, which has emerged as the biggest sticking point for the government, is the resignation of Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. And the CJP has made it clear that the agitation will continue until its demands are addressed. As the monsoon session was underway on Monday, CJP leaders presented a memorandum pressing their key demands to Health and Welfare Minister JP Nadda. The next day, the political fallout widened after the opposition leaders gathered to protest outside Prime Minister Narendra Modi's residence. Leading them was leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi and Congress MP Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, along with the party president Mallikarjun Kharge. After hours, the police removed all the Congress leaders and detained them for hours before releasing the lawmakers later that night.
Now, more people are returning back to the protest side. Once again, the footfall is so high that the people present over here are spilling out of the designated area of protest, which is a small enclosure. And now all the roads that are leading up to this protest site at Jantar Mantar are once again full of people, also volunteers and locals who are bringing food and water here for all the protesters. And so now the original demands of the Education Minister's resignation and also of a structural overhaul of India's education system, that has now been compounded by the unnecessary use of brutal force against people, which has made many people angry and come back to the streets and demand for justice and demand for accountability, and at the bottom line of it, demand to be heard.
As anger mounts on the ground and political corridors remain chaotic over the demands of the Education Minister's resignation, the Prime Minister has issued his first statement on the fiasco. In a post on social media platform X, PM Modi said that fast-track courts will be set up to take stringent action against individuals responsible for a paper leak. But the issue appears to have moved beyond the question of exam irregularities alone. The movement's spread beyond Delhi has given it a larger political meaning. The latest protests have put exposed frustration of youth who are witnessing limited job opportunities, deep educational inequalities, and what many perceive as an unresponsive system.
At least 23 people were killed, dozen others were injured, and over 100 remain missing after catastrophic flash floods triggered by heavy rainfall struck eastern Afghanistan's Nuristan province on the 20th of July. With further rain and storms forecast in the coming days, the job of the rescue teams searching for survivors won't be an easy one. Given that many are still unaccounted for, officials fear the death toll may rise even further in the next few days. Our next report tells you more.
Parun, the provincial capital of Afghanistan's Nuristan province, was the worst hit in flash floods triggered by heavy rainfall on Monday. Numerous houses and infrastructure facilities were severely damaged, and the streets across the town were blanketed with mud, boulders and debris, wearing a despondent look. Police in Parun have urged residents to stay away from the river, while communities upstream reportedly fired gunshots into the air to warn people of possible incoming floodwaters. Toiling under heavy rain, rescuers, using their bare hands and wooden poles, were seen searching for the missing.
This was my room. When the flood hit, government forces fired warning shots into the air. Some people fled the scene, but others stayed. The dead, martyrs and the injured are still missing.
Afghanistan's Disaster Management Authority has so far confirmed 23 deaths and reported more than 80 injured. But with around 100 people still unaccounted for, the true scale of the tragedy is yet to be ascertained. Search and rescue operations have been launched to recover the bodies of the victims, rescue the injured and search for those missing.
According to preliminary information, recent severe flooding in Parun city and surrounding areas of Nuristan province has left 23 people dead. The bodies of 15 victims have been recovered so far, while 80 people have been injured and approximately 100 remain missing. The floods also completely destroyed 7 houses and partially damaged 23 others.
Given the relentless and heavy rain and more rainfall expected in the coming days, the rescue operations are taking place under challenging conditions. Rescue teams were seen working with bare hands, shovels and wooden poles in their frantic and desperate search for the survivors and the victims. Even a bulldozer brought in to clear the worst-hit areas was of limited use in clearing the masses of debris. With each passing hour, the search to find the survivors has become a race against time. Given the urgency of the situation, Afghanistan's Defense Ministry has deployed the military to support rescue and relief work. Yet, the challenges are mounting, with the forecasts of further heavy rain and storms across several provinces.
We appeal to international aid organizations and local charities to do everything they can to help in situations like this. We also ask them to support the people affected by this disaster, because there is a great need for assistance here.
The weather has also affected neighboring Pakistan, where 12 people were killed, according to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's provincial disaster agency. Afghanistan is particularly vulnerable to climate change and has increasingly suffered due to deadly floods. The trail of destruction in eastern Nuristan province points to a broader pattern of intense monsoon-linked damage across Afghanistan and Pakistan this year. Between March and April alone, more than 200 people have died in flooding and rain-related incidents across both countries. The rising death toll has deepened concerns over weak infrastructure, limited disaster preparedness, and the ever-escalating human cost of extreme weather in the region. For now, the priority in Nuristan remains search, rescue, and recovery in the city of Parun and the surrounding areas. But the scale of the destruction is an indication that the worst-hit province could face a prolonged humanitarian crisis long after the floodwaters recede.
Sri Lanka is battling the worst outbreak of mosquito-borne dengue in nearly a decade. More than 50 deaths and over 76,000 infections have been recorded since the outbreak began in January. prompting the island nation to turn to its armed forces to help curb the spread of the disease. Our next report brings you all the details.
The South Asian island is fairly acquainted with the scourge of dengue, especially during the monsoon season. However, this year the situation is particularly bad, necessitating the deployment of military. According to official data, in the first 6 months, 61,057 people were infected in the tropical country, which is more than double the 30,060 infections recorded during the same period in 2025. In the first 2 weeks of this month, more than 18,000 cases were recorded, pushing the overall tally closer to 100,000. With hospitals rushing to add beds, convert wards to care for the ill, and step up hours worked by doctors and nurses. Shalini Aloka Pereira, who works as a teacher's assistant in a private school, has opted to be treated for dengue at home.
I had some instructions from my family doctor. Then he asked me to stay at home because my the platelet count is not too much down. Then I did my home meditation at home because too much patients are in the hospital, in the government and the private hospital.
The alarming numbers of the stricken, spread wider by a more virulent strain, has overburdened Sri Lanka's public health services and hospitals and resulted in the deployment of military last month. The heightened strain comes in the aftermath of Cyclone Ditwa, the nation's worst natural disaster, which tore up critical infrastructure and health facilities in late November, causing losses estimated by the World Bank at $1.4 billion. Though Sri Lanka has an advantage of 4 beds for every 1,000 people, which outstrips the average global ratio of fewer than 3, the rapid increase in patients is very challenging, especially in a place like Negombo, one of the worst hit areas.
It's challenging to the doctors because it's a rapid increase of patients. Like all of a sudden you get a big bulk of patients coming into the hospital. So it's challenging. So challenging to the doctors, nurses, the health administrators, everyone. So because you have to use the same resources that we had before.
In a bid to curb the spread of the disease, Sri Lanka has gone all out, with Air Force drones tracking stagnating rooftop pools of water, to military and police officers helping to inspect homes, building sites and schools in a campaign to stamp out mosquito breeding sites. The government's intent can be gauged by the fact that nearly 11,000 mosquito breeding sites were cleared this month, with fines levied at more than 4,000 premises found to harbour them.
The main focus has been getting rid of vector breeding sites and getting rid of vectors by fogging and the usual things. So there's absolutely no doubt that these measures are very, very important. But when you look at the whole world, not just Sri Lanka, these factors alone don't seem to be enough.
Reportedly, authorities are also considering the option of a dengue vaccine, but the experts have warned it may confer limited benefits as the virus is complex and several strains are circulating. The infections are expected to ease off in August as monsoon rains weaken, but could again climb from November as rainfall returns to the island nation in its second annual monsoon season. Here's hoping that the authorities are able to curb the spread of the disease sooner and prevent overcrowding in hospitals.
In the border province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan police has launched a large-scale crackdown against undocumented Afghan nationals from the 10th of July. As part of the crackdown, houses have been demolished, roadside identity checks are being conducted, and Afghans have been told to leave as part of a broader government pushback. Noteworthy is the fact that millions of Afghans have been forced to return from Pakistan ever since the security-driven repatriation drive began in 2023. Our next report explores.
The relations between the South Asian neighbors Pakistan and Afghanistan have been on a downward spiral ever since the Taliban stormed back to power in Kabul in August 2021. Since then, Islamabad, facing a rise in attacks on its security forces, has repeatedly accused the Taliban government of providing a haven to anti-Pakistan militant groups, a claim refuted by the Taliban. In 2023, Islamabad announced that it would begin deporting undocumented foreigners and has this year carried out airstrikes on Afghanistan, purportedly targeting militants. In June, Pakistan's Interior Ministry ordered law enforcement nationwide to arrest Afghan citizens without visas from July 10. Once that deadline lapsed, the Pakistan police launched a large-scale crackdown against undocumented Afghan nationals. In Matani, which is a short drive from the provincial capital Peshawar, many of the Afghan settlement's 200 houses were demolished by the authorities. Left with no choice, the Afghan settlers hurriedly packed up their belongings while others hid at home. Some, like 70-year-old Ahmad Mullah, just didn't have many options and bore the brunt of Pakistan government's apathy.
The police say that we don't understand. They keep telling us the same thing again and again. The police don't consider anyone's circumstances. They don't care whether I have any money in my pocket or not. They don't take my health into account either.
50-year-old Najib Rehman narrated his ordeal, his desperate dash to retrieve his father's medication and children's school certificates from his home, but to no avail.
My father is sick, and we were just asking for a little chance to be able to get his medicine and get the children's education certificates, but the officers didn't listen to us and just said to demolish the house. At that time, one of my daughters was under the rubble. I saved her, otherwise she could have died.
The security-driven repatriation drive has economic consequences as well. Peshawar's Board Bazaar market, renowned as Mini Kabul and home to thousands of shops run by Afghans, has witnessed a sharp downturn in customers. It is to be noted, millions of Afghans have returned from Pakistan since 2023, a vast majority of them from centers such as southern megacity Karachi and the capital Islamabad. Some of these Afghans had lived in Pakistan for decades, and others had fled their home country following Taliban authorities' return to power in 2021 in hopes of a better life.
The situation of Afghans should be seen through a humanitarian lens. Every country has its own right to manage its border. At the same time, we remain concerned about people who could face serious risk if they return to Afghanistan, especially women and girls, as well as other vulnerable groups who need protection. We urge the authorities to ensure that any return is voluntary, safe, and dignified.
According to the United Nations, Pakistan remains home to more than 1 million Afghans. The recent Pakistan police crackdown has exacerbated the humanitarian crisis and threatens to push these Afghans into a risky, uncertain future, a terrifying prospect they fled from.
Acclaimed filmmaker Nitesh Tiwari's much-awaited epic Ramayan's trailer launch on the 20th of July turned into a spectacular evening in New Delhi as the film's star-studded cast and makers assembled to provide a sneak peek into the magnum opus. The grand event marked Pratham Sankalp, the ceremonial beginning of journey from India to a global audience, and was the first public appearance of the principal cast that includes Ranbir Kapoor, Sai Pallavi, Yash, Rakul Preet Singh, Sunny Deol and Vivek Oberoi, among others. Take a look and I will see you next week.
Jai Shri Ram.